As the year draws to a close, there are a couple of big games on everybody's mouths. One of them being Hitman, another being Alien, and another, one of the biggest ones for me, being Skydance's Behemoth. This is the dev team behind The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners 1 and 2, two of the most highly acclaimed VR games of all time, and they're putting all of their focus into a single player, action-adventure story game, which is something we've never seen them do before. Saints and Sinners was very survival focused and was tied to an IP, but this is its own thing and is obviously taking inspiration from other sources, which we'll talk about today, but I'm very, very excited for it. However, there's been one or two things over the last week or so that has made me a little bit worried towards the launch, but I think in the end it's all going to be okay, and I'm going to tell you why today. Before we jump in and talk about Behemoth a little bit more and why it could be my VR game of the year, which is currently held by Metro, I would say, please feel free to like and subscribe. Only 25% of you are subscribed after all. With that being said, let's jump in. So, what is the reason for me sitting down here today and talking about Behemoth a little bit more in depth? Well, one is that I'm really excited for it, of course. One is that I've gotten hands-on time with it, and now that we're getting near to the actual release of the game, I want to explore that a little bit more with hindsight. But one of the biggest reasons is the fact that the launch event has just been done, and also we've got an ESRB rating for it. Now, if you're unsure what that is, it's essentially what rating the game gets in terms of, a 12, a 15, a 17 plus, and 17 plus is exactly where Skydance's Behemoth has landed. Now I'm going to be reading the description from the ESRB, so if you want no spoilers, maybe skip ahead by about a minute. All the footage in the background as well is also going to be from the first trailer, because one of you lovely commenters pointed out that I did include one of the latest trailers in one of my other videos, and that has shown off a bit of the game which maybe some of you didn't want to see who want to go in blind. So this will just be the first trailer on loop for this video. Anyway, let's take a look at what the ESRB have said. Their rating summary says, this is a VR adventure game in which players assume the role of an outland warrior, Ren, on a quest to save his village. From a first-person perspective, players traverse a frozen wasteland while engaging in melee-style combat against enemy soldiers and behemoths. Players use swords, throwing knives, and blows to kill enemies. Enemies emit large blood spurts when hit. Large blood stains appear in some areas. Several attacks result in decapitation and dismemberment, leaving severed body parts on the ground. Players can keep attacking enemy corpses on the ground, i.e. post-mortem damage, resulting in large blood splatter effects. I can back up all of this in my time with the game earlier this year. The dismemberment especially was absolutely brutal, and you've seen that in the trailers as well. Even in the first trailer here too as well, it's a big selling point for the game is how gory it is. Saints and Sinners was the same there. It is absolutely brutal, and it's been carried over in the soldier combat to this game. And that's one of the reasons why I'm really excited for it, is it's pulling no punches. It's getting into that dark, moody tone that it wants and sticking there, and I think if it sticks to that, and the entire game has that tone and feel, and it's as polished as the combat that I played and my little vertical slice of the game is, I think it could be a real contender in the gameplay segment of things to be VR Game of the Year for me. The story as well seems to be quite beefy. I think from my interview they said 12 hours, around 12 hours maybe, for the full game, which is fantastic to see. I will most likely be doing a playthrough of that on the channel if all goes well. So please feel free to stick around for that when that starts, when the game comes out. I can also confirm the embargo is lifting before the game releases, which is fantastic to hear. That's usually a good sign for its quality, and I can say I haven't got my hands on the game just yet, but hopefully I'll have enough time to play through it before the embargo lifts. That's one of the signs which is pointing to this being a polished launch, is the fact that the embargo will lift before the game comes out, meaning that they're confident that people will watch the reviews, be happy, and then pre-order or buy. A telltale sign of a not great VR game or game in general is the embargo lifting on the day the game comes out, meaning that people who pre-ordered will be going in blind and will have no chance to cancel their pre-order if they feel like the game isn't living up to their standards through the review impressions that have been released. The game has also gone gold, the team have revealed, so hopefully that means it's as polished as can be. On top of that, Sony's QA for games like this is usually pretty good. It's a very weird topic to talk about because for some releases the QA has been really tough. I know Ghost of Tabor struggled with that quite a lot, and that one isn't out just yet. Phasmophobia struggled with it. I've talked to a lot of devs who have had some issues with QA with Sony, so hopefully Behemoth is one of the games where they've been rigorous with it and don't allow any bugs to come through, but we'll see. Saints and Sinners Chapter 2 was a recent release that I can think of from Skydance that was a really good game, but the bugs brought it down, and if it's the same for Behemoth, that could really ruin things. I think it is also worth talking about today the launch event, because that was a big event where a bunch of creators and press alike went to the Skydance Studios, I think, or a venue that they hosted at, and they had a big launch event in Skydance themed with loads of music and stuff like that, but they all just got together to celebrate the game going over the finish line. And I think at that launch event there was supposed to be a new build of the game, a new vertical slice, but I think they had some problems with it last minute and had to roll it back to an old one, which is slightly concerning. But also that is just a vertical slice of the game. It's not indicative of the whole game functioning. In my opinion, they just run into something that makes that maybe 30-minute slice of the game not work well. So again, yeah, not indicative of the full game, but hopefully we don't see any issues like that. The worst one for me would just be crashes and things like that just render the game unplayable. I did run into a little bug on my vertical slice that I played earlier this year, which was, I think one of the enemies that I was fighting died in a couple of hits when it really wasn't meant to. If it's little things like that every now and then, honestly, that wouldn't really ruin the game for me at all. But if it is crashes and kind of progress being reset and stuff, that would be a bit of a deal breaker. Okay, let's end this on a much happier note. The Behemoths themselves. There have been a couple revealed throughout the trailers and the promotional stuff and the vertical slices people played at different gaming conventions and at press events and press tours. I won't spoil any of the other ones if you're going in blind, but overall, they are fantastic creatures to fight, it seems, and they're just massive spectacles in VR that we haven't really seen before, aside from small instances in games like Asgard's Wrath and little bits of Horizon Call the Mountain. With the tall necks, that was pretty fantastic to see the scale of those, but these behemoths are even bigger and much harder to take down. And as a fan of Shadow of the Colossus, this really hits home for me, and that's probably what I'm most excited about for this game, is the big spectacle fights with those. They're not too oversaturated in the game campaign from what we hear, but maybe I think that's a good thing. You don't want to take away how special each of the fights are and making them feel generic by having loads of them. There are a fair few sprinkled throughout, but it's not a thing that's going to be happening every 30 minutes or so, as you'll be fighting plenty of human bosses and normal human soldiers throughout your playtime. But ultimately, those behemoth fights, I think, might be what make or break the game for me in terms of it being my game of the year, because if they nail those like they did in my preview session, and the rest of the fights are just as good as that, this will most likely secure that top spot for my VR game of the year. So we'll see. Anyway, what do you think of the Behemoth trailers that we've seen? Any of the stuff you've heard about? Have you pre-ordered it? Will you never pre-order a game? That is completely fair. But are you excited for it nonetheless? Please do let me know. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to our patrons and YouTube members who are on screen right now. Without them, I would not be able to do this. Let's all be excited and look forward to Behemoth coming out fairly soon, and also be excited for Starship Troopers Continuum, which is coming out fairly soon as well. Hopefully I'll have a review on that one for you guys when that one rolls around. Thank you all for watching once again, and I hope to see you all in the next one.